You know that voice in your head? The one that says things like, "You're messing everything up. Why even try? You're just going to fail again. You're not smart enough. Not disciplined enough. Not good enough." It shows up when you make a mistake, when you're about to try something new, when you're lying in bed at night, replaying everything you did wrong. And here's the thing that voice doesn't tell you. It's not telling the truth. It's just repeating a pattern. In this episode of Better Everyday Studio, we're doing something different. We're not just going to talk about why negative self-talk is bad. You already know it. We're going to understand where it comes from, why it feels so real, and most importantly, how to change it. In 3 simple steps. Because the way we speak to ourselves shapes everything. Our emotions, our energy, our decisions, our entire lives. And you deserve to have an inner voice that supports you, not one that holds you back. I'm Alina. Let's get started. The real cost of negative self-talk. Let me share something that might surprise you. When you engage in harsh self-criticism, your brain lights up in the same regions as physical pain. Functional MRI studies show that self-critical thoughts activate the anterior cingulate cortex and insulate, the same areas that process physical pain. That voice in your head? It literally hurts. But here's what's even more striking. Research on self-talk frequency has revealed that individuals who report more frequent negative and self-critical self-talk also score higher on measures of antisocial personality and psychopathy. Now, I'm not suggesting that having a critical inner voice makes you a bad person. What this tells us is that harsh self-judgment is a pattern. Like any pattern, it can be changed. The cognitive disruption hypothesis explains that we often talk to ourselves more when we're experiencing confusion, feeling overwhelmed, or facing unsettling self-related experiences. In other words, negative self-talk spikes precisely when we're most vulnerable. And here's the real cost. When you repeatedly think a negative thought, even something as simple as "I always mess things up," you're firing a specific group of neurons together. Over time, those connections become faster, more automatic, and harder to interrupt. It's like a shortcut your brain builds because it thinks it's being helpful. That repetitive negative self-talk actually strengthens neural circuits associated with shame, anxiety, and low self-worth. And it weakens pathways tied to emotional regulation and optimism. So if you've been wondering why that critical voice feels so persistent, here's your answer. It's not a character flaw. It's a neural pathway. And neural pathways can be rewired. Understanding your inner critic, the common patterns. Before we can change our self-talk, we need to understand its patterns. Psychologists have identified several common cognitive distortions, thinking patterns, that our brains use to convince us something is true when it isn't. Let me walk you through the ones that show up most often in negative self-talk. All or nothing thinking. This is when you see things in black and white. There's no middle ground. Something is either perfect or a complete failure. I missed one question on the test, so I did terribly. I wasn't perfectly calm during that presentation, so I completely embarrassed myself. Catastrophizing, also called magnification. This is when you take a small problem and blow it up into a disaster. I made a mistake at work. What if I get fired? What if I can't find another job? What if I never recover from this? Mental filtering. This is when you filter out everything positive and only focus on the negative. You can have 10 good things happen in a day and 1 bad thing, and your mind will obsess over the one. Emotional reasoning. This is when you assume that because you feel something, it must be true. I feel guilty, so I must be a bad person. I feel anxious about this presentation, so it must be a disaster waiting to happen. Labeling. This is when you define yourself by a single action or moment. Instead of thinking, "I made a mistake," you think, "I'm a failure." Instead of "I acted impatient," you think, "I'm a terrible person." Should statements? These are the rules you believe you must follow. I should be further along by now. I should be able to handle this without help. I should never make mistakes. These statements create a constant sense of obligation, leading to anxiety and guilt. And because they're often unrealistic, you're always falling short. Now here's the important part. These aren't truths. They're patterns. And patterns can be interrupted. Step 1, name it 2. Tame it. This brings us to step 1, and it might be the most important step of all. Name the voice. There's a technique created by psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Siegel called name it to tame it. The idea is simple. When you label a negative thought pattern, you reduce its power over you. Here's how it works. The next time that critical voice shows up, don't argue with it. Don't believe it. Just notice it. And name it. That's my perfectionist voice again. There's that fear of failure script. That's the anxious part of me trying to predict rejection. That's my inner critic catastrophizing again. Why does this work? When you name a thought, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning and self-awareness. This helps you move out of emotional reactivity and into observation mode. You're no longer in the storm. You're watching it from a safe distance. Research on self-talk supports this approach. Studies show that individuals with higher levels of mindful awareness, the ability to observe thoughts without judgment, report significantly less frequent negative self-talk. Mindfulness helps you break free from automatic, harmful habits by observing your thoughts without reacting to them. So step 1 is simple. When the critical voice appears, just say, I notice I'm having the thought that, not I'm a failure, but I notice I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. That small shift changes everything. Step 2, ask the right questions. Once you've named the voice, step 2 is to get curious about it. Instead of accepting the thought as truth, you ask questions. Here are the questions to ask yourself. Question 1. Is this thought actually true? When your inner critic says, you always mess things up, ask yourself, is that really true? Do I literally always mess everything up? Chances are the answer is no. You've done plenty of things, right? You're just not thinking about them right now because your brain is filtering them out. Question 2. Is this thought helpful? This is a powerful question because a thought can be true or partially true, but still not helpful. Let's say you did make a mistake. Your inner critic says, you messed up. You're so stupid. Is that helpful? Does it help you fix the mistake? Does it help you learn for next time? No, it just makes you feel worse. Question 3. What is this thought trying to protect me from? This is a question I love because it shifts your relationship with the inner critic. Often, negative self-talk is actually a misguided attempt to prevent failure or embarrassment. Your brain thinks that if it criticizes you enough, you'll be motivated to do better. So instead of fighting the voice, try to understand it. What is this thought trying to protect me from? Where did I learn this kind of self-talk? When you ask these questions, the critic becomes less scary, and you create space to choose a different response. Question 4. What would I say to a friend in this situation? This is a classic self-compassion exercise for a reason. We're often much kinder to others than we are to ourselves. If your friend made a mistake, would you say, you're such a failure? You always mess everything up? Of course not. You'd probably say something like, everyone makes mistakes. You'll figure it out. I believe in you. So why not offer that same kindness to yourself? Step 3. Replace and rewire. Now we get to step 3. This is where the real change happens. Replace the negative thought with a realistic, supportive one. Notice I said realistic, not positive. We're not aiming for toxic positivity here. We're aiming for honesty with kindness. So if your inner critic says, you're going to fail, you don't have to say, I'm going to be amazing and succeed beyond my wildest dreams. Instead, try something like, this feels hard, but I've done hard things before. I might not succeed on the first try, but I can learn as I go. I made a mistake, but mistakes are how I learn. If your inner critic says, you're not good enough, try. I am enough, exactly as I am. I don't have to be perfect to be worthy. I'm a work in progress, and that's okay. Now here's the most important part. Repetition, and more repetition. Remember what we talked about earlier? Your brain builds neural pathways based on what you focus on and repeat. The critical voice became strong because you've repeated those thoughts thousands of times. To build a new voice, you need to repeat the new thoughts consistently. Say it out loud if you can. Write it down. Visualize it. This is how you build new neural circuits and train your inner coach to be louder than your inner critic. The science of why this works. Let me give you some research that shows why this approach is so effective. A meta-analysis of mindfulness and self-compassion-based interventions found that these practices produce moderate large effects in reducing stress and small to moderate effects in reducing anxiety and depression. Another meta-analysis found that self-compassion-focused interventions have medium treatment effects on self-compassion, mindfulness, and depression. But here's what's really powerful. One study found that individuals with high self-compassion were only 20% likely to be at high risk for burnout. For those with low self-compassion, that risk jumped to over 94%. That's not a small difference. That's a life-changing difference. The research also shows that mindfulness and self-compassion work together. Mindfulness helps you recognize suffering without over-identifying with it. Self-compassion adds the emotional quality of care that protects against self-criticism and distress. Together, they form a powerful combination for transforming your inner voice. And the best part? You don't need a therapist or a meditation retreat to start. You can begin right now with one thought. The one small step. Let's bring this home with something you can do today. I want you to practice the 3 steps we've covered. Step 1. Name the voice. The next time you notice negative self-talk, just say, I notice I'm having the thought. Step 2. Ask the questions.
Is it true?
Is it helpful? What is it trying to protect me from? What would I say to a friend? Step 3. Replace and rewire. Choose a realistic, supportive alternative. Say it out loud if you can. Write it down. Repeat it. Here's one simple practice you can use anytime. When you catch yourself in a negative thought, take a breath. Place your hand on your heart and say to yourself, this is hard right now. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not alone. That's it. 3 sentences, a moment of self-compassion. It doesn't erase the negative voice overnight, but it starts to build something new, something stronger, something kinder. That voice in your head has been with you for a long time. It learned to speak that way somewhere along the way, maybe from a critical parent, a difficult experience, or simply from practicing the same thoughts over and over again. But here's what I want you to remember. That voice isn't you. It's just the voice. And you can change what it says. You don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to accept the harsh words your inner critic throws at you. You can notice them, question them, and choose something different. Because the way you speak to yourself matters. It shapes your energy, your emotions, your decisions, your entire life. And you deserve to have an inner voice that lifts you up. I'm Alina, and this is Better Everyday Studio. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, be as kind to yourself as you would be to a friend. Small steps.
Lasting change.